Well, g'day guys. Sunday, the 11th of July. A beautiful clear morning in Echuca, Victoria. That's New South Wales just there, as soon as you get into the water, which is anywhere from here, I think. As soon as you put your foot in the water, you're in New South Wales. I think what I'm going to do is throw the drone up. So you ready?
Go on board, thank you very much. Anywhere you like on the lower two levels that hasn't been set for lunch.
Thank you.
Alright, now diner.
Alright, I'll catch you pretty soon.
Good morning ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, and welcome aboard the paddle steamer EMMYLOU. My name is Warren. I'm having a bit of a drive. Now I guess the first item of interest is on our port or left hand side. This is the paddle steamer Canberra. We'll see the Canberra. So I'll tell you more about the Canberra later when we see her again. Now the great towering wharf on our right hand side, evidence of the extremes in river height that can be experienced here along the Murray. So the wharf was built in stages between 1870 and 1880. On several occasions throughout her life, the river has been right up near the top of that wharf. The most recent case was in 1993. That was the third highest flood on record.
Mighty big winch. Let's go have a look at the paddles going around. Everything's well balanced there. Waiwama Wharf. It's not very big compared to the Echuca Wharf.
We have a gorgeous little paddle steamer chugging merrily upstream towards us, and this is the paddle steamer Adelaide. The Adelaide was built here in Echuca, Waiwama in 1866. That makes her the oldest still operating timber-hulled paddle steamer anywhere in the world. She spent most of her working life towing the logging barges to and from the Barmah forest. Steamer Canberra heading upstream towards us, built at Goolwa in South Australia in 1912 as a fishing steamer and as a family home. So the family who built the vessel lived on board, used it to provide fresh fish to the local communities and stations and homesteads of the Lower Murray in South Australia. Boxing Day 1944, when the Canberra commenced her first trip as a tourist boat. It's been operating as a tourist boat ever since.
Victoria on the dry land there. New South Wales in the water here. The lockdown state here. Non-lockdown state there.
Now the great towering wharf in front of us looks very much as it would have looked back in the 1880s. Two differences being, one, the wharf today is only 1/5 of its original length, and two, back in the 1880s there would have been up to 20 or more paddle steamers and barges jostling for position along the wharf. Upon completion, the wharf was 1/3 of a kilometre long. During the years 1870 to 1900, Echuca was the 3rd largest port anywhere in the country. Only the coastal ports of Melbourne and Sydney were larger in terms of the volume of cargo processed. So some 300 steamers and barges were operating up and down the Murray-Darling Basin during that peak period. The steamers and their barges ventured inland, carrying the staples of life and provisions for those remote communities, and then returned with the produce from those communities, mainly wool, which was then transported back to ports like Echuca, the wool loaded onto the waiting railway trucks at the top of the wharf. Those railway trucks were sent rattling and clanking down to Melbourne or Geelong, the produce then loaded onto clipper ships bound for England. By the end of the Second World War, the paddle steamer trade along the Murray was pretty much over. Rail and even road transport had taken most of the freight hauling business from the rivers. The port area was derelict. The world was in the frozen grip of the Cold War. It was decided the best use for the wharf was to pull it down and send the timber to Melbourne to power the munitions factory in Maribyrnong. Fortunately, before the entire wharf was destroyed, what you can see today was preserved, partly for posterity and partly to service the few remaining paddle steamers still flopping around the river at that time.
Looks like we're turning around here. We're going backwards now. Look at this little thing steaming along. Okay.
Manoeuvre we just performed is known as a stem turn. Quite a handy manoeuvre on a narrow river such as the Murray. So what we do, we gently ease the stem post or front of the vessel into the bank, into the soft mud.
That's where we were.
Then we allow the momentum of the vessel to swing the stern around behind the bow. We've created a pivot point on the bank. We then back out, swing the nose back into the current, and off we go. So it's the river equivalent of a 3-point turn.
I did see the mud come up from the front.
So the EMMYLOU does not boast independent wheels. We cannot slow or stop one paddle wheel or have one going ahead whilst the other is going astern or anything like that. Both of our paddle wheels are on a fixed shaft, so they both go ahead or astern at the same time and at the same speed. We don't have bow thrusters or stern thrusters or anything like that. All we have to manoeuvre our vessel is the large barn door rudder at the stern, which is controlled by the wheel in the wheelhouse. Then of course we have the wind and the current, which we hopefully use to our advantage.
I'm going to say thumbs up on that
So
move.
the EMMYLOU, despite her appearance and her ye old worldly charm and all of that, is actually a relatively modern vessel. The EMMYLOU was built at Kundruk on the Murray downstream of Echuca in the early 1980s. Purpose-built for the tourist industry, more precisely for the overnight tourist industry. So to this end, the EMMYLOU has accommodation on board for 16 passengers to spend the night. The EMMYLOU conducts 2, 3, 4 and 6 night cruises. Passengers sleeping on board and waking every morning to a different location along the river. Well, ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, we are almost back to our home mooring at Echuca, which means that our luncheon cruise is drawing to a close. We would like to thank you for cruising with us this morning and this afternoon. We hope you enjoyed your experience on an authentic Murray River paddle steamer. And those of you who dined with us, we trust that you enjoyed your lunch.
Alright, and there you go guys, that's our trip on the paddle steamer, EMMYLOU. If you're ever in the area, I'd advise you, or urge you actually, to just jump on board, buy a ticket, jump on board. It's something that you'll never ever forget, because for me that was another bucket list tick off my list. And thanks everyone for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Well, before 100 out.